leases. We're going to talk a little bit about the Texas Property Code, which you need to be familiar with. And talk about working with tenant clients, tenant screening, lease listing review in the Texas 1102, and a little bit about information on assistance animals.
Mitch, I'm sorry, can you go back one slide? I just need to take a quick photo of the link. No. Thank you.
All right, general questions or general statement. You are not a property manager. Number one, you do not know landlord-tenant law, but you can advise your clients and review great articles and websites to seek advice. Refer people to an attorney. There is a great online resource from Texas A&M, the landlord-tenant guide that you can download.
Texas A&M.
Yeah. It's a landlord-tenant guide. Yeah, I recommend that you download it, like put it into your dot loop or your DocuSign and share it with your clients. It's a great resource for them. It's a couple of years old, but most of it is still current. Be very thorough on your listing agreement if you're a listing agent, because section 12, everything that's on that is what's on the lease itself. So you already have it ready to go. I'm sorry, paragraph 20. Verify who the owners are. You want to look at the tax record and see if the person you're talking to is the person who actually owns the property. If they're not, then you want to get documentation that they do have a legal right. Yeah, please be sure to register for these. They didn't, I had 4 people, it was almost canceled. And you know, you can go to the tax record for the ownership, and deeds are public record. You can always go to the county and look up the deed.
To the account.
To the county records. If it's held under an LLC or a corporation, you must have the name of the corporation who owns the property, and then the person who has the legal right to bind that corporation.
You know, we use sometimes corporation wiki because it will give you who the signers are.
Oh, it will? Okay, and what's that called?
Corporation wiki. I'll share it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, me too.
Me too. I'm gonna have this in here a couple of times. You're not property managers. Property management's a whole different ballpark. You must have your own broker for that. And there's a lot of laws that go with it. The number one TREC complaints is property management and leases.
And what's the line defined?
If you are handling money for another entity, like taking in the rents or scheduling construction, scheduling vendors, your property management. Yeah, for us, we are there to find a willing, qualified tenant. Either side, either if we're representing the tenant, then we're there to find a lease that matches their criteria. Landlords need to do their own research and be familiar with the codes. They also want to be familiar with the local municipality rules. Some of the municipalities actually have, well, I don't remember which one it was. It was either Stafford or what's another one down there? One of those little towns. They send an inspector to the home before they'll let you rent it out, before they'll let a tenant turn on the electricity. They want to make sure that they're not slumlords. And some of the municipalities, you just have to go register your property as a lease, or the same thing, the tenants can't put the utilities in their name. Yeah, you probably want them putting it in their name. All right, this is the landlord tenant guide. And it goes into the landlord's duties, the application, it talks about the tenant's duties, it talks about the security deposit and how it has to be accounted for. It talks about the locks that have to be on the property. You're familiar with the locks that have to be on a property? Yeah. You have to have keyless entry on the property, on all the exterior doors.
Yes.
Keyless entry. Yeah, state law.
That's a state law.
That's a state law. You're a landlord, right?
Yes, I am.
Like a deadbolt that you can't unlock from the
Oh,
outside.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that is Texas law. You also, and that includes the door that comes from the garage into the house. They consider that to be an exterior door. So you must have the keyless entry. If you have, we talked about a little bit more further on. You must have viewfinder, view holes in all the exterior doors. All windows have to open, all windows have to lock, sliding glass door.
I went to a viewing and they didn't have peepholes. It was
Well, then they're not compliant with Texas property code.
it was a duplex.
Mhm.
And that was when I walked in, before the showing, and it was gonna be her mom and her daughter, and I was like, oh, well, we can go, they don't have peepholes, and I wouldn't feel comfortable even showing you a house that's the first thing that girls should. We have to look through the peepholes, I didn't know that was a requirement.
It's state law, yeah.
There is, I'll send it to you as well. There is a video on YouTube from Mr. Ricky.
Okay.
He's talking exactly about what
Oh.
you're saying. It's a really good video.
Video, okay.
Yes,
Yeah, that's great.
and he talks about all these things too, and then after the tenant moves out, you're supposed to rekey within 7 days.
Mhm.
The peepholes is going, so do they get in trouble?
The tenant can actually walk away from the lease and you can't do anything about it.
Okay.
And if anything happens, like someone breaks in the house or enters the home, you're gonna be liable because it's state law that you have these on. When they first made it a law, there was a landlord who raised his tenants because he could just unlock the door and walk in at any time. So they said, no, the tenant needs to be able to lock the doors so that nobody can unlock them from the outside.
Crazy.
Yeah, if you're online, please turn on your cameras. It's just like you're here, so if you don't have your camera on, we'll take it that you have left. Good, okay. You can I just Google it, it's just as easy. Texas landlord, tenant guide.
Okay.
Provide a copy of the lease to prospective tenants. So they, just like you go over the contract when you get a buyer, do the same thing with the lease and with the lease application. So they know what will be expected of them when they actually file for a lease or an application.
The copy of the.
Just a blank one,
It's yeah,
just a blank one, yeah.
program.
So when you first start working with them, they know what is gonna be asked of them. I mean, with the application, what type of documentation do they need to put together? You need to be looking, like always, look at the date on the forms. With leases, they were updated in May of this year. Not the lease itself, but a couple of the documents. Ryan, I'm going to have to take you off. It is against state law to be driving and on a Zoom. And we're reliable, we're responsible for it also. That's why it's so big with trip, you have to be on, it is against the law to be driving and being on a Zoom call. Ask the agent for the model tenant selection criteria, that's again a state requirement. Where it came in was when there was landlords who were charging X dollars for an application, and all they were doing was collecting applications. So they were making money off the applications and nobody was ever getting the lease. The model tenant selection criteria,
I have a question there. The one,
okay,
I gave it, so I did it since the beginning with my client, the landlord. And nobody asked for it, so I didn't give it to anybody. Should I?
it would be good practice to offer it even if they don't ask for it. As an agent here, as a tenant's agent, you need to ask for it. If you look at the application, right before their signature, it says that I have had the opportunity to review the landlord's selection criteria.
And then whenever I gave them, because we negotiate certain details on the contract. And then I sent them to sign the model tenant selection as an informative form,
Yeah,
but they didn't want to sign it.
as long as you can show that you offered it to them before they made an application.
No, well, but they didn't ask for it, so that's
Yeah.
why.
Okay, as an agent, we need to ask for it. It's required by the state, but mainly if, let's say you charge $100 for an application. Or you send them through My Smart Move and they charge $75. If they don't get that rental, the landlord by law has to give that money back to the tenant.
Fine.
If they ask for the model tenant selection criteria, by law, you have to give it back to them if you don't select them. What they wanted is so that you're requiring a 700 credit score and no pets. But I've got a 600 credit score and I have 4 pets. Well, I would never have made application. I never would have paid for you to do my background check and everything. Because I knew I didn't have a chance.
But in the negotiations, you can open the chances, even if you stated that you're not getting a pet, like.
Well, that's true. It's the model tenant selection criteria. Yeah.
But we were changing that, so
Mhm.
even though they didn't ask for the model tenant selection, I was not applying part of it still.
You just want, if they ask for it, you didn't have it available for them.
Okay,
If they don't get it, then by law, they can ask you for their money back.
okay.
It's gone.
Which I used to have all the applications to go for rent,
Mhm.
and that is a wonderful service because they can do the application and submit all the documentations without being charged. And then when you pre-approve them on paper, then you can say, okay, okay with charging you, but now go for rent, raise their fees for $80 or something like that. So I changed to rent free and they don't do the same.
Okay, and HAR now has one also.
That's rent free,
That's rent screen, okay, there's also tenant screening,
yes.
which is another, the similar, but you still have to provide the model tenant selection criteria.
Mhm.
So, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Thank you.
If tenants have any questions about the provisions in the lease or a response from a landlord, get it in writing from the listing agent or landlord. Do not assume anything. Make sure that the proper disclosures are provided if the home was built before 1978. It's a Texas 2008. There's 2 different lit-based disclosures. One's strictly for sale and one's for leases. The one that's for sale has 4 paragraphs, the one for lease only has 3. If you're online, remember to turn on your cameras or we'll take it that you have left. We actually provide a checklist for you for both sides, whether you represent the tenant or the landlord with the required documents.
And it's missing the wire fraud. The checklist for the leases, there's no wire fraud form added, I in local
And the checklist or on the template?
on the checklist. I didn't find it, I added it.
Okay, on the checklist, I thought it was on there, I'll double check it, okay. Broker authority, when it comes to listing a property. We're there to market the property. It's not our decision who that landlord takes. So best practice is always to have a third party that's doing the background checks, the applications, all of it. It's at arm's length for us. That's when you use go for rent, tenant screening. Carlos, what was the name of the one that ATR just did?
Rent spree,
Rent.
rent spree, STR.
Okay, rent spree. I was looking for that this morning, rent spree. Yeah.
Yes.
When adopting a tenant selection criteria, they should be looking back at the statute. As far as the property code. Fair credit. There's also rules that go along with someone who has a criminal background. What the landlord can take into consideration, criminal background. If that's something the landlord's concerned about, put it in the model tenant selection criteria.
I have a problem I'm going through right now, so I was referred, I had a referral from a couple that are from Brazil and their son is going to culinary school out here, but. The problem is with leasing, how do I present it to them, because his parents are paying his living expenses. And he's
Okay.
on the F1 visa, so.
Okay,
How do I go about what kind of app, or how do I prove their income? Because what they did in school is they just submitted some type of documentation to show here is how we're gonna pay for the school and everything.
but nothing for living expenses.
I mean, we haven't got there yet, because I don't know what to say when I call, because they, I said, I sent them a list of apartments and of landlord to tenant, just to see, okay, I'm gonna call. But I don't even know what to say to them, like, hey, this is what I'm going through, do you guys accept that, or is that?
You just got to tell them what the deal is. They're here for school, parents will be guarantors. They
How
may,
do I get proof of income with
Do
their?
they have accounts here in the US or only in Brazil?
That's a good question.
Normally, you have to offer additional deposit or something like that. Yes.
Yeah. That's my next thing was saying, you can sometimes offer additional deposits, like a month and a half. Please turn on your cameras.
You have to be very careful in apartments.
That's
because
what I'm-
sometimes they will say one thing and
And
then
then it
actually
actually pays for all
something
that,
else.
and that's why I said maybe landlord to tenant would be a little easier, because I'll have direct access to be able to communicate and leave it up to them for a choice.
Because I have even been and sit down across them and I said, are you sure these are all the fees? And said, yes. And then by the time they sign, oh, there is one more fee. So
I'm doing that today.
About that,
Do you have a handout, Mitch, or?
I don't,
Oh,
yeah. Fair credit reporting, if the landlord refuses somebody because of credit. You must give the Texas 2212, which is the adverse action. This should actually be given every time someone's not accepted. But if it's because of credit, you have to do it by the fair credit reporting, which is a federal law.
what is
Yeah.
the number of that one?
2212 is the form. Adverse actions.
Say that again, I didn't understand.
If, let's say you look at their credit report and you see that they had a foreclosure last year or whatever, and you refuse them based on that, then that form has to be given. And it gives the tenant the right to get a free copy of their credit report. Yeah.
They have a new number for that form, it's PXR instead of PA.
Oh, I did still have TAR, that's the old one.
Oh.
And actually now they changed it to TR.
TR only?
TR.
Oh, okay.
It's Texas Association of Realtors.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's still the same number, 2212.
Okay.
And you use that one also when you just don't accept somebody, and it can be because you got multiple applications in and you have someone that's gonna offer 2 times the security deposit, or you have someone that's got better income. You could put that on there that shows landlord what the difference.
I have that situation, just I finished renting to the other one, so I need to send that to the one that we did.
You should send that to the one that you didn't get. And plus it lets them know that the decision's been made. You let them know, yeah. It's nice to have it documented. It also protects us with fair housing.
Yeah, I was how to do it, you know.
Fair housing, one of the biggest complaints is because of disabilities. You gotta be careful when you're looking at fair housing, especially with leases and familiar status also. Always have a conversation and document in writing your client's requirements for a property. So sit down, we have a form which is supposed to be informational only. That kind of talks about things that they could look at in the model tenant selection criteria, but talk to them. You know, what are you looking for? What's your ideal client? What's gonna be an automatic no? You know, if they have a credit score of 200, no, I'm not gonna entertain them. If they have 12 dogs, I'm not gonna entertain that. If the landlord tells you that they'll accept pets, but it's on a case-by-case basis, what does that mean? You know, are they saying that they'll take 1 dog that's under 75 pounds, that's over a year old? Put that on the model tenant selection criteria, or no cats. I would never rent a house to someone who has cats, and I have a cat. But, and I would never rent a house to someone, my own house, to someone that has a puppy. Because puppies are destructive. I know, I have 3. We have done this form. And it's the model tenant selection criteria not received. So if you're the tenant's agent, you contact this landlord prior to making an application, or you contact the agent. And they say, and what you'll most likely get is, I don't know what that is, we don't require it here at our ordinance. I understand that, but it is required by the state of Texas. So then you can document when you requested it, told your clients that they did not provide it, do they want to move forward? And then it's up to the client whether or not they want to make application.
But the timing is tricky because sometimes they send the application directly without even calling. And then
That's fine. If they didn't ask for it, you're still gonna be covered, but as a listing a tenant's agent here, that's required. It protects the client. You know, they're gonna pay $85 and then find out that, well, they would have never accepted me anyway. Different screening tools, My Smart Move, Go for Rent, tenant reports, rent spree. The new one that HAR has for us. I haven't even looked at that one. Carlos,
It's very good.
is it pretty good?
Yes, it has also options.
Oh.
The normal service costs $39, and then they add other services. $14.
And that's up to the landlord too.
Yes.
Yeah. I like all of these because it's at arm's length. It's never us saying that, oh, I would take this person, I wouldn't take that person. It's all at arm's length. They do it online and the report goes directly to the landlord. It doesn't come to us as agents. The credit report, you don't ever want to get that.
What I love about Go for Rent is that they do verifications also. They verify income or employment, and also they verify location where they live.
Okay, do they actually call previous
Yes,
landlord?
Whatever the employer.
they have to contact you for it.
Okay,
They do,
They do, they do.
that's nice.
Yes.
agents should never do that. Landlords, it's their house, they need to be doing that. But,
I did everything.
yeah, because then it becomes you doing the verification. And if you miss something and that's a bad tenant, Agents have been sued and lost because of that. You told me this, and this is the truth.
And the client doesn't speak English.
That is between the landlord and the client. Yeah. Cause it's not, you're not the landlord unless you're the landlord, but if you're not the landlord, keep it at arm's length. We're there to market the property. Landlord makes the decisions. Or you refer them to a property manager. And property managers, they're not that expensive. How much is, do you know how much Larry charges?
I think 8%.
Now, he actually went down. It's under $200 a month now.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. For you to have, for him to manage someone's property, charges them, I wanna say 110, that's in my mind for some reason. But he charges anytime that he has to make any repairs or go to the property, there's a markup on that. But it's nice because it's all at arm's length for that landlord. If I was the landlord, I don't have to worry about it. He's gonna be doing checks on the house, he's gonna be doing the background checks on tenants, he's going to initiate eviction if it's needed. It's all done with the property manager. So it's where landlord, it probably helps out a lot. Required documents, what's the very first document on all of our checklist?
Information about brokers.
Information about IABS, yes.
Can I follow your screen somewhere online or something?
No, this is on my, it's on my shared drive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I cannot read.
Oh.
Sit up here,
You can move by.
sit up here.
I think I'm gonna have to move close.
As we start to mature, it gets harder to see, doesn't it? My grandmother used to say she was so damn tired of maturing.
Wow.
So IABS, first substantial communication. And that's whether or not they ever become your client. You have to give the IABS, it needs to be documented. If you're the landlord and you've got an unrepresented tenant, which a lot of time is what happens, you have people that don't have an agent. So you wanna give that IABS, you have to keep that IABS for 4 years. Best practice, put it in command, let KW take care of it for you instead of you having to worry about it. The listing agreement. The exclusive right to lease, which is updated as of 6/24/24. It was just done last week. Seller's authorization to exclude them from multiple listing, you know. Our rule with HAR is if you take a listing, it needs to be on the MLS within 3 days. If the landlord is saying, you know, I want to go ahead and get it listed, but I don't want it on the MLS until July 1st because the tenants are moving out. And then I want to go in and maybe paint and clean the carpet. So you still want that listing agreement executed today with the terms starting today, but you may not market it for another week. Because you want to make ready, but with it being the term starting today, they're tied to me. It's on that, it says right underneath there, if they enter into a contract before the start of the term, you're out. So you've been taking your pictures and you've been doing all this marketing and all of a sudden they get another tenant. You're out, you've lost that money. So have it start the day that you do the presentation. And then you can start marketing at a later date. Yes.
About that one on the KW disclosure, it covers the flood also.
It does, but we don't have one that we use. We do have it for landlords, but not for tenants. But the flood is in there. But there is the state required flood disclosure.
Okay.
That's separate.
Oh.
We want to copy the MLS with the active, just to show that it's on there, what the information is, when it was put, when it expires. Yeah, you think it's not a big deal, but I had one the other day, which they put it on the MLS, and it expired a week later.
But
Yeah, instead of putting 25, they put 24. So it was like 6/15/24 to 6/31/24. So they basically had it on there for a week. Because they just fat fingered it. The tax record, we want to copy the tax record. We want to be able to see that the person who is signing that listing agreement truly has ownership of the property.
If it's new, I thought this, I asked for the HA for the title.
The deed
That's fine.
or the.
Yeah,
So I
if
don't know that instead of
Yeah,
the tax.
the closing paper, if it hasn't changed hands yet, yeah, upload that and then we see that, okay, this person does own the property.
Okay, that's the.
They have a legal right to it.
The same thing, Mitch, sometimes, with the LLCs, we request all the legal docs.
The more you can get, the more we can show that we are working with the person who owns the property, the better. If you've been in my other classes, there was an incident in San Antonio where they listed a property, got it under contract, it's in escrow, and they found out that the person that signed was one of 3 that had to sign for that LLC. The other 2 knew nothing about it. And they said, no, we're not selling this property. It's never planned on selling this property. What does that mean for the listing agent?
What does that mean?
It means that they marketed something they didn't have the legal right to. And also, the agent who brought it was a buyer. They owe them the commission because they found someone who was willing and able to buy the house. Make sure you know who owns the property and that you have everybody signing. Extreme. We have the disclosure. The addendum for rental flood disclosure, that was updated also. And so this year, May. Landlord, once you get the contract, copy of the lease, signed lease. If it's with another broker, we need the W-9 for that broker so that accounting knows where to send the checks to and they can account for them. Broker notice to buyer tenant, the 410. And the signed model tenant selection criteria. This is a really good form to use. Information to broker, to buyer or tenant on all your transactions. It's just a little bit extra information. Tenants agent, we want the ABS, buyer tenant representation agreement, broker notice to buyer or tenant, that's 1410. Landlord model tenant selection criteria provided by the landlord. The lease and the MLS with the status change and the tax record. With the MLS, it used to be because of the commission was on there. Well, that's going away as of August 16. It also shows that they gave you credit for bringing a tenant to the property. That helps with your stats. Right, general information on landlord regarding assistance animals, great form. It really tells the landlord about assistance animals. Keeps it at arm's length. Not required, I would like to make it required. When we update the checklist, it may be on there. Fair Housing Act defines assistance animals as animals that work, assist, or perform tasks on the benefit of the person with a disability, including providing emotional support that alleviates or improves symptoms or effects of a disability. And it's all encompassing. The landlord can ask for documentation from a medical care provider, and that can even be a support group. They're a medical care provider. They have to have personal knowledge of the tenant. They can't get it online. Now, last year, I think it was last year, the state of Texas up to 10,000 fine if someone does a fraudulent assistance in per annum.
And if the landlord doesn't want pets, and they come with an assistant. and-
Assistance animals are not pets.
So you have to consider them.
Yes.
You don't.
Yeah, unless it's gonna be
You cannot deny the application.
not based on assistance animals. No, that's fair housing, which is what the loops. But they have to ask for accommodations. Someone can't make application and say, well, you didn't give me this because I have an assistance animal. Well, you never told me you had an assistance animal. You have to ask for accommodations. I've met someone who I didn't know, well, I've known her for years, but I didn't know she has an assistance animal now for her diabetes. The dog lets her know when her blood sugar drops. I didn't know they had trained dogs for that now. So that is not something when you meet her, you would even know she has a disability. But with that, you would be asking for documentation. Now, if someone comes in and they're obviously blind and they have a seeing eye dog, you can't ask for documentation. It's pretty obvious the person can't see, they need a dog.
You know what, Mitch, I took a class this week about, it was actually Leases, and they also said that you could have an assistant animal. And I think the other one was kind of what you're saying, I think it was another dog that the same person had epilepsy.
Yes.
So one was for different disabilities.
It's interesting. It's amazing what they've trained animals to do. And be careful. We had an agent at the other brokerage who has a German Shepherd it's a disabled vet, PTSD. And they did not accept his application based on his credit report. But the listing agent asked, what kind of dog do you have? And right away, that it makes the appearance of discrimination. She was wrong. Luckily, he was understanding when they said it was because of your credit. He could have filed a complaint on them and they would have lost. There's no way you would lose.
Or because of souls, because it was the type of breed of the dog.
Because she asked.
Um,
It didn't care what breed it was. When she asked what kind of breed it was, that had the appearance of discrimination. It doesn't have to be discrimination, it just has to have the appearance of discrimination. Oh. Stuff we covered. We're gonna pull up the actual lease. No. This is the lease listing. So it's gonna be the same thing as it is with the sale, the parties, the landlord, the broker. property address with legal description. Be sure you always put the county in. County is required.
For new properties, there's no legal description.
You could put a note on there, you know, new property, no legal description, and then you would attach the
The
closing documents.
Okay,
Make sure you also check the CAD. It may not be on HAR, but it may be on the CAD already. I found that this morning. Central Appraisal District.
okay.
Mhm.
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah,
I had found for new construction, yeah.
it hasn't been updated on Real List yet, but it may be updated on the Central Appraisal. District.
Central or county?
County Appraisal District, yeah. Okay, and if it's not there, you can, this is the listing agreement, you can see it, see attached. Closing documents. If they are offering to leave any non-real estate, which is be your washer, dryer, refrigerator, that's probably the most common we see. If there's anything that's on the property when they're showing it, let's say washer, dryer, refrigerator, but they plan on taking them out, you're gonna put it here. What's the monthly rent and what's the term for? Is it going to be 12 months, max of 24 months? Or is it gonna be 12 months period? How long is that landlord willing to take a lease for?
You know, B2, when the units are furnished, they usually would, the landlords will usually would give you like an inventory.
You want an inventory.
Mhm.
And if it's furnished, you want an inventory of everything.
Mhm.
I have one.
Even the spoons.
Even the spoons, I was gonna say, you want 4 spoons, 5 forks, 3 set, they even had linen. So you
Yeah.
had the inventory, all the
Towels.
linen, everything that was in that property had to be inventoried so that the landlord knew what was there and the tenant knew what was there and what was expected to be there when they move out.
Documented with pictures.
Documented with pictures,
Uh-huh.
and that is something that's the responsibility of the landlord, it's not our responsibility. When does the listing begin? Like I said earlier, I want it to begin the day I'm talking to them. It says here, if landlord enters into a binding written lease for the property before the date the listing begins, and the lease binding is on the date the listing begins, this listing will not commence and will be voided. If I put on here that this doesn't start until July 1st, and this landlord takes a lease, a contract this weekend, I'm out of it. I've already paid for my pictures and everything. I see that a lot. They'll put down that if the term's gonna begin next month and you go ahead and do all your work, they can contract with someone else, or I can come in there as a listing agent and get them to sign a contract with me and you're out. I want it to start the day that I'm making my presentation.
Oh, I see the date there is June 24th.
I have a question on that, Mitch, because sometimes, like you said, the properties may not be ready. And they sign, they stand.
Yeah.
The thing, I'm trying to remember when you go to Matrix and you're entering the PIN, I don't know what it triggers is the end date. You know, where is it the date of the leasing agreement, but sometimes it will not allow you to.
Sometimes
use
it-
the other date.
Yeah, it won't allow you to use when this was signed. You want to put it when you actually start marketing it.
Okay, yeah, that's correct, that's what it was.
Yeah, because you don't want, it'll count all those dates. We don't
Correct.
want that. Broker compensation. This is the big change as of Monday. Brokers' compensation or sharing compensation between brokers is not set by law nor fixed, controlled, recommended, or suggested by the Association of Realtors, MLS, or any listing service. Broker compensation is fully negotiable. Brokers independently determine their fees. That's part of the lawsuit, the settlement. That has to be on, it has to be conspicuous. That's why these were all moved from paragraph 5 and paragraph 8 into paragraph 5.
Hi,
So
Mitch.
A. Brokers' fees, including how much that landlord is willing to offer to a tenant's agent. Like it was before, when earned and payable, landlord will pay broker, how much? What do you charge to market and find a tenant on a property? How much does that cost you? And then what's your fee going to be? This would be 1 full month. B is a percentage of all lease paid underneath the property. It works out to about 8.33, which is nice because what if you find a tenant who's willing to sign a 3-year lease? Well, all you're gonna get is 1 month's rent, but you've brought somebody that's gonna pay that landlord for 3 years or for 2 years.
Could you kind of break down what that means? Like term of lease, so we get a percentage of the whole entire amount?
Yes,
Kind of like a commercial.
kind of like a commercial lease. Yeah, so if they're doing 12 months, it's gonna be 1 full month's rent. If you're doing 8.33 and you're doing 2 years, you're gonna get 2 full months. It also benefits the landlord. What if they take someone who's only gonna do a 6-month lease? According to here, they still have to pay 1 full month. That's what they agreed to. If you did here, then they're only gonna pay half a month's rent, which is equitable. But let's say you're going to take a listing and the rent's $500 a month. What does it cost you to list a property? Are you gonna be doing pictures, photography, professional photography? Are you gonna be spending your time? Are you gonna be driving out to the property? You've got your sign, you still have to pay HAR dues, NAR dues, Keller Williams. $500, you're probably not making any money, you're spending money. But I still wanna help them out. So I know it's gonna cost me X dollars to list it. I may put a flat fee here. Let's say it costs $1,000, that's my charge. And then 2 is how much of the amount in 5A1 are you going to be splitting with the co-op agent, the tenant's agent? So it's either a percentage of 1 month's rent, a percentage of all lease, paid under lease, which would be 4 you do the math. Or part of that flat fee that we talked about. And let's say you have a landlord who says, I'm not going to offer anything to that tenant's agent. That other agent needs to get paid, they can get it from the tenant. Now, how much do you charge? That's gonna be in B. This is only the amount going to the broker. So when earned and payable, landlord will pay broker X amount. What about intermediary?
You're gonna give the other document, the other form.
Well, you have to do intermediary, but how is he gonna split up? Now, here they're saying they're only gonna pay the broker, let's say $200. You're gonna have to split that with the other intermediary. So now you're at $50 for that. Oh,
Does our brokerage here have any standard of what is or is not acceptable in those?
if you're gonna take anything less than 3% on a sale, you need to have it approved by the office first. It's gonna be approved on.
So I get that part for the sale.
Oh, but for this, we really, normally if you're gonna take this one, it's right, it's the same.
Okay.
This was something they went into a lot of detail about the other day, talking about for sale. You still, if it's an intermediary, you're only going to get the amount here. It's up to the broker to decide how that's gonna be split out. We've had agents like, well, no, I don't wanna share my compensation with the other agent. It's not your choice, it's the broker's money. So the broker decides how to split it up, and is it equitable for you not to pay, broker not to pay one agent over the other? This makes it. All right, earned and payable. When the landlord agrees to lease or rent the property to anybody at any price on any terms, whether by written or oral agreement, broker individually or in cooperation with another broker brings a tenant, or if the landlord breaches this agreement. It's payable the time the landlord and any tenant agree to lease or rent the property. Doesn't say when the tenant moves in, it's when they agree to rent the property is when it's payable. Landlord refusal to lease the property after broker's compensation has been earned. Rare that this ever happens. This would be that we brought them a tenant, they agreed on the tenant and they said, no, we've changed our mind. Our compensation is payable. Landlord's breach of this listing or at such times set out. Other compensation. Let's say it's a 1 year's lease, and then at the end of it, that tenant says, I wanna renew, I wanna make this go long, I wanna stay here. How much do we charge for that renewal? It's negotiable, of course. So is it percentage of 1 month's rent? Same thing, or a flat fee? When I've done this, I have dropped what I would ask for in half. Because you're basically not doing anything but helping them with one form. I did have a corporate listing out in Sugar Land, their town center where the courthouse is. And I probably got paid 4 or 5 times on that after with one person. Because it was a corporate listing and they did it for 6 months and then his job went a little bit further, so I got paid for another 6 months and another 6 months after that. It was worth it. If they decide to purchase the property before the lease expires, what are you gonna charge your compensation for that? Again, with this one, I've knocked it down because you've got a client, you've got someone who's looking to purchase it, so you're basically just helping out with the paperwork. You're not gonna be marketing it and paying for photography. Reimbursable expenses. Don't like reimbursable expenses. This is, and I've done it one time since 2009. We had my working partner's minister who baptized her kids who got reassigned to Louisiana. Well, he had a landscaper who would come and mow the yard and everything, and then we'd write a check to the landscaper, and then we'd send the invoice to the owner who would send us the money back. Now, he was a minister that she had known for years, so we trusted that. But be careful when you're doing reimbursable expenses. No guarantee you can get your money back. Protection period. So when this expires, and you want to add like 60 to 90 days is normally what I see on here. If someone who made application comes back and they rent the property, well, then our compensation's been earned in that. Within 10 days of it ending, you have to send that landlord a list of all the people that you brought to their attention. And hard to follow up on. How are you gonna know who rented the property? And what's our #1 job as real estate agents? What's your #1 job, Carlos, as a real estate agent?
To release or to.
Lead generate.
Oh.
Lead generate is your #1 job. So if you're trying to keep track of this one property that you're gonna make a couple $100 off of for a couple of months, 60 days, you've been using your time a lot wiser. G is always Harris County. It's where the brokerage is located, not where the property is located. Oh, 6 is when are you gonna start marketing the property? But like I said, I did it today, but we don't wanna start marketing until July 15th for everyone to move out. Now I check 1B. 17 days. So you wanna do it on July 15th. Why? Move out and make ready. Now, if they're going to put it on the market right away, you're gonna check A1A. Broker file this listing with one or more listing services. By the earlier of the time required by the MLS, which is 3 days. MLS, our MLS, HAR, the rules 3 days. 3 days to put it on the market, 3 days to make changes, if it goes pending or sold, 3 days. And at this point, if you check 6A1B or 6A2 or 6B, you got all that? You want me to draw a diagram? If it's not going on the market within 3 days or not going on the MLS at all, you have to do the HER 300. And what that form does is it explains to the owner the benefits of the MLS. There's 40,000 agents on our MLS. If it's not on the MLS, those people are not going to see the property. So it behooves them to get the property ready. Once in a while, you'll have a owner who already has somebody lined up. They just need your help getting it going. So it may be non-MLS. Listing content means all photographs, images, graphics, videos, virtual tours, drawings, all of that is the property of the broker. You do your pictures, your videos, it's property of the broker. Landlord grants broker non-exclusive, irrevocable, worldwide, royalty-free license to use, sub-license, blah, blah, blah. All broker listing content is owned exclusively. Landlord understands and agrees that both the landlord listing content and broker listing content, including any such changes, such content may be filed with the MLS. Anything that the landlord or the owner gives us is also listing content. It needs to be not copyrighted so that we can continue to use it. Well, you'll have sometimes owners after it closed saying, I want my pictures. You know, they're not your pictures, they're our pictures. It's in the listing agreement. We paid for them. Make sure you have a copyright release on them. Access. Authorizing access means the property means giving permission to another person to enter the property. The other agent. Scheduling company is going to be showing time, which is part of HAR, which is part of what we pay every month. Use it. Have you ever dealt with an agent or with a showing where it says contact agent to make appointments?
Oh,
It's horrible. It's horrible trying to get a hold of them. And basically, I'm kind of lazy. I'm not gonna work harder than I absolutely have to, and I'm gonna leverage. Then take care of it. If there is a tenant in the property, when you're putting it on the market, you must do a key box authorization from the tenant.
always use Supra.
Always use Supra. Always, always, always use Supra. Lock boxes. Combo boxes. And this is the landlord saying yes or no. You can put up Supra on the property or you can't put a Supra on the property. Once in a while, we get, usually it's higher end properties, they want accompanied showings. So you may not put a Supra on it at that point.
Can somebody share a bad story about leases? Can you share? Yes, you,
For example,
the one of the Woodlands,
I know that's terrible one.
but people learn from things like
I mean,
that.
I rented to,
This is
go,
a personal program.
it's a huge big fraud going on. So if the FBI is involved, so I get to be one of the chosen. So,
Okay,
so I rented to a guy that is the name. They have everything is set up correctly, okay? So they have the ID, the name, the job, the office, so you will get everything correct.
Yeah.
And, but nothing, but they're subletting, so they rent it to other people. So they do the contract and then they put another person inside.
Mhm.
When you meet with them at the house, the person that gets there is the assistant, because he's so busy that the assistant is there, so. In person, they give you the checks, everything, you know, the thank you, and my boss is gonna be here later, and blah, blah. So thank God. They never sent me the checklist for the condition of the property, and I didn't met him, so I was like coming back to see if he was there. And when I got there, I was like, can I see Mr. Smith? And they were who? I was like. The one in the contract, and the picture and the people were different, so then I started very, very concerned. So they were totally different people, and he started saying stories, and they were scary. So I was like, okay, thank you, night, bye, I didn't do anything, and I left. And then I started finding out how can I do the eviction, and even though it was a breach in the contract, I got back with them and I started asking questions, and I told them that I knew that there was something wrong, and because he kept saying stories, and so they really have very good stories behind it. So every time I was talking, they give me the right excuse, the right reason, something to make me feel that it was okay.
Yeah.
And at the end, I agreed to meet them in the office. And when I drove to that office, it was like nothing, there was nothing. Then that was the worst part, then I did a police report, then, I mean, I learned that if you want to evict, you need to have the real name of the person that is inside. So I couldn't evict if I didn't know the name of the person that I was evicting. So that's an issue.
That part.
No, and then the police was telling me that it was civil, so they were not, it was like, I was like, what am I gonna do? But as the house was in a complex, I asked the guard to ask for the IDs without them knowing, so I got the copies. So I
That
think
was smart.
like the police for a while, but I was just figuring out
Did you run background checks?
everything, and then.
Which is great for the person who made the application, who's on the lease, but it's not the person who moved into the house.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's that one that's going on, and there was another one that was done by agents who were making application, and they would put somebody in the property. And they had fake everything, and then they would steal from the property and not even pay the first month's rent. When they come in there, you know, the washer, dryer, refrigerator, the
Here-
copper wiring was
Here,
gone.
the worst part, they're giving you the money, so you're getting everything.
Mhm.
Like a regular, no, they pay me everything.
Yeah.
So they're charging just their game, they're charging them a fee, but and I knew that because I called the number as a Mexican, that's sadly, I don't know if there's Mexicans, but they were speaking Spanish, and I was like, I wanna rent an apartment, but I don't have documents. Don't worry, we can help you, you don't need anything, and we have a lot of properties, where do you wanna meet? They were like, okay, thank you, and I did the call from another phone number, so they don't have track of.
Talk to your landlords, you know, give them stories like this. Best practice is for that landlord to meet the homeowner or the person that's gonna be moving in and let them know, my requirement is I have to meet you prior to moving into the property. Do the inventory condition form together.
Exactly.
Yeah, then you can walk through the property, you can take pictures, everybody agrees to it. Do you know where
But I
you-
was doing that, and they were already inside my house.
they were, oh,
Yeah, the day they went to receive the keys and everything, it was their system. And I say, don't worry, I'll be back.
yeah,
The
and
very
maybe
next day when you come back, you have
the
4 people
landlord can make
inside.
a requirement to get the keys, it has to be the person.
Exactly.
You gotta talk to your landlords and let them know what's going on. Going through the property and doing the inventory and condition form together. It's also a chance to show them where the fuse box is. It's not called fuse box anymore, is it?
The breaker box,
I'm old. Breaker box, yeah. Also the water
the
turn off.
water shut off, yes,
Mhm.
it's true.
Cause if a pipe breaks, you want that tenant to know where it is,
No.
so they can turn it off.
I gotta write that.
The gas turn off, if it has gas in the house, where's the valve to turn it off if there is a gas leak? It protects the landlord's property. And the landlord has the legal right to enter the property. They can go in anytime and view the property.
And these,
They don't even have to have permission. That's why you have to have that keyless entry. If I'm in the property, I can lock it and that landlord's gonna have to knock on the door. Otherwise, that landlord, it's their property, they own it. I think it's a great idea for the landlord to say that they will replace the filters, air filters. I'll be doing that on a monthly basis. And you can even tell me, it'll be the second week of the month, that's something property managers do. So you know that one day the house is gonna be cleaned, so you know it gets cleaned once a month. And they're probably gonna hide everything. So, but
It's just a good custom to do that. Because I remember Rattle Reeves had a property that he leased the property, he was a property manager. And the tenant was okay, but then the tenant invited her boyfriend to live with her without any permission, and they didn't know until he destroyed the property. And they had to put like $20,000 to repair it, and they were gone. Nobody, no way to track it.
Yep, so I had a friend, no pets. When she got to check on her home, they had children who wanted to introduce her to their new dog. Who had puppies, 7 puppies, and there's no pets allowed. So now, and we'll get into that a little bit further, but there was a fee if you had a pet that wasn't authorized, and a daily fee. Yeah, and it was the fee for having a pet and the daily fee times 8. There was 8 new pets there.
you know, all these scary stories give me, for people that it's coming to buy investment properties and they don't know anything or they don't have it's scary, you know, even, I know.
That's why they need a good agent like y'all.
You know, another thing, Mitch, that what you're saying is true, because I didn't know, on this class that I took.
Mhm.
One of the agents commented that, actually, that agent did property management. So they were saying about the smoke alarms,
Mhm.
that their company, they use this Mr. Ricky. And then when they
Okay.
go and change the locks, they test the smoke
What are you
alarms.
saying about the
There is something that looks kind of like a.
I've seen what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, it throws a smoke, because they said you don't have to actually. You know, the battery, they said that the little light is working, but you don't know if when the smoke reworks.
I didn't know Mr. Ricky did that.
Yes, they do that.
And by law, you need to check.
By law, you need to have those,
Mhm.
and they
Yes, that
said,
working.
Working properly.
and they
We
said.
don't even know.
There's a lot of stuff that goes along with being a landlord in the state of Texas. So our
And,
job is to educate, give them the resources.
and they were saying that it exactly was a lawsuit. I think it was here in Texas, I don't know where, but he said that apparently the tenant, you know, when the thing started beeping,
Yeah.
the battery's going down. So apparently the tenant removed the battery.
Oh.
So,
Yes.
and of course, you know, that same night, the property burned with the tenant inside.
Ugh.
So they were saying, hey, you know, we checked these things that were working.
It's documented.
Yeah.
Yes, those are things that we're there to educate. Can't make anyone do anything, but we give them the resources. We're never the source, we're always the source of the source. The landlord tenant guide, the Texas property code. Paragraph 9 is intermediary, whether or not they will allow intermediary. Talks about confidential information. 11, broker authority, use reasonable effort to diligently market the property and procure a tenant. Same thing as on the listing agreement. Sells. Paragraph 11D, make ready. 11D1. Broker may not arrange for contractors to make repairs or alterations on this property.
Always check that one.
Always check that one. Someone asked me about that the other day. How much should they put in this line here? And my response was, how much liability do you carry? If something happens and you're the one who's doing that, you better have liability to CYA. We had an agent who was doing this. Make ready, and using her son's, not at this broker, was at another one. Using her son's company, and they screwed it up majorly. Guess who was at fault? Yes, she was, not the brokerage. She was. So when you get to paragraph 11D1, got it? That also gets into property management, bordering on property management. Landlord represents that they have fee simple and peaceful possession of the property. They're not bound to another listed agreement. Any pool or spa or any required enclosures, fences, gates, latches comply with the law. There's a lot of areas around Houston. There's a lot of HOAs, so they may have all different rules. You can't know all of that. It's up to that landlord to check those. The landlord is current and not delinquent on all loans or financial obligations, except like the HOA fees or mortgage. Landlord is not aware of any liens or other encumbrances on the property, except it's not jurisdiction of any court, like the divorce proceedings. There are no optional fees for use of common area. If there's a fee for the pool, even if it's they have to pay a deposit to get the key to the pool, landlord needs to put that here. We don't want to market a property that maybe is gonna go into foreclosure.
I was about to say the same thing, because if not, even if it is, and the tenant doesn't know, the bank becomes the landlord.
Yes.
You cannot evict that tenant.
Mhm. Landlord is not aware of any condition concerning the property which materially affects the health or safety of an ordinary tenant. We've talked about this one a lot. What is an ordinary tenant? I don't know.
I was about to
It's
say
not
that.
defined. Yeah. But walk the property and look for things. Years and years ago, I mean, like 30 years ago. So my aunt knew, rented a private place out in the Heights. And the tree in the backyard was dead. It fell and killed her tenant. I wouldn't want to be her lawyer. Okay. Landlord's additional promises to cooperate with shown. Sometimes you have to remind people not to rent or sell the property without letting us know about it, not to negotiate with prospective tenant. Remind them that that's what they're paying you to do. Let you help them. Because landlords and sellers, they want to be helpful, but they're not always helpful to themselves. Maintain pool and all required enclosures in compliance with all applicable laws. Second time we've seen it. Provide broker with copies of leases or rental agreements. So if there's a tenant in there right now, even if they tell you they're moving out at the end of the month, get a copy so you know exactly what's going on. And the notice vacate that they're going to be moving out. Complete disclosures, amend if there's any changes. Disclose any restrictions in landlord's insurance on the property that affects the tenant's use, such as trampolines, aggressive animals, above ground pools.
Yeah, because now, some of those insurance are so peculiar, they may probably don't even insure the house if they see a trampoline.
Right.
Or an
It's big
above
liability.
ground pool.
If the property becomes vacant during the listing, landlord must notify landlord's casualty insurance, to let them know it's vacant. If you have new landlords, new investors, they need to talk to their insurance carrier and make sure that they even allow rentals. And also, if they're just purchasing the property, that their lender allows it. Some of them want you to live in the property for X amount of time. And if you're doing a condo, some of those, you have to be owner occupied for so long. It's the landlord's responsibility. We're just telling them, y'all need to check this. Broker is not liable to personal injury to any person or loss of damage to any person's real personal property. That's what they have home insurance for. This is, they're indemnifying us from it. Special provisions. What I've seen in special provisions is landlord. I don't remember how it was written, but the landlord I was working with, she paid for pest control. She had it scheduled once a quarter, but that was a fee that the tenant was gonna have to cover. So we put that in special provisions. And then it went on to.
Especially this, for anything.
Well, if the tenant was gonna pay for it, this was something she said, I want this maintained on my home, but I'll expect the tenant to pay for it. So we put it in special provisions on the listing.
When the landlord has to pay for something before the contract,
This was actually going to be during the contract.
during the contract.
Yeah, she just wanted to document it that this would need to be added to the release.
I've seen too, but I think it was on this other section, on the other special provisions on the page 11. They had the air filters, we changed those. They also had rental insurance for the tenant.
You can put that, this is the listing agreement. So if that's something they want, we can write it to make sure it goes into the lease.
Utilities.
Okay, paragraph 20 is pretty much the lease. What's the monthly rent and when is it due? Is it due on the first of the month? Is it due another day? As a tenant's agent, find out when they get paid. Not everybody gets paid on the first and the 15th. Maybe they get paid on the first and third Thursday. So that may be something you want to write into the lease. You don't want to set your tenant up for failure before they even get started. It's negotiable. At which time late charges incurred at 11:59 on the what day? It has to be late 24 hours after it's due by law. So if it's due on the first at 11:59, they can't start charging late fees until day 3 that it's actually late. So you may want to put 3 days on there. It's up to them. Again, that is covered in the property code. How much are late charges? Is it going to be a flat fee or is it going to be a percentage? An additional late charges per day. Animals, they're permitted or they're not permitted. If they're permitted, are there any restrictions? Like 1 dog over a year, blah, 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 whatever they want. Are they gonna charge a deposit? Smart to do. Monthly rent increase. 1 month, one-time non-refundable payment. You may be able to come in and treat the home for smell or God forbid pests, fleas. They can charge all 3 of those. Violations. Whether pet animal is permitted or not permitted, an additional charge of X and length per day. Talk to your tenants. Pets are dogs, cats, reptiles, birds, insects, fish. Those are all considered pets. So if it's no pets, you can't have any of those. With pets, now when I make application, I move into this home, I have 1 dog, but my dog passes away. I can't go out and get another dog without permission from the landlord, because it was this dog that was approved. Broker is not authorized to refuse a valid request for reasonable accommodations for an assistance animal. What's the security deposit? Oh, no, this would be for just a security deposit. What'd you say? Maybe,
Whatever you negotiate.
whatever you negotiate, get them to think about it. If it's $1,000 lease, how many repairs can you do for $1,000 with a home?
Much.
Not a whole lot. You also don't want a tenant thinking, it's 1 month's rent, so I just want paid rent 12. You can just keep my deposit. That's not the way it works. Get them to think about things like that. And they still need 1 month's rent.
You know, on that class that I took, they said that in Texas, there is no, exactly like you're saying, no guideline as far as the security, and then somebody asked, well, what is reasonable? They said, the sky is the limit, so you can change whatever you want, there's not a.
We have a listing that's $23,000 a month. Have you seen that one? And there's already a contract on it. It is a nice house and it's actually in town. Well, so, and it's furnished. Well, $23,000 would probably make some good repairs on that home if they need it. They have some high-end furnishings, so maybe go higher than that. But if it's $1,000, you have to do a whole lot for $1,000. Utilities, all utilities be paid by tenant except, if I was to ever lease my house, I would probably pay for water at a swimming pool, and I want that swimming pool to have water in it. So I may put on there all except water up to a certain price. Guests, how many days are guests allowed? Totally up to the landlord. Do you want 2 weeks, 3 weeks? I had a tenant. And when we got to doing the lease, it was, I think it was 20 days or maybe even been 30 days. And without his spouse there, he said, can we make this less? I'm like, well, yeah, why? Because her parents like to come stay.
They said the same thing, the guy was saying
Yeah.
that he had, let's say it was 7 days, and then he had right underneath, 3 days, he said 3 days, and he had 3 days mother-in-law.
Yeah, he literally asked me to make it less to keep his in-laws from staying for a month at a time. I thought it was hilarious. Normally what I see is 14 days, 2 weeks. Talk to your tenants. You don't have a child that comes home over the summer. Maybe they have in-laws that do come from out of the country and stay for a couple of months, or people from up north who come stay here for the summer.
Well, we didn't have to add them to the list.
That's the best bet, is to just put them on the lease. They're gonna be here for that long.
Hear us online?
How many vehicles are permitted on the property? Usually a guideline is how many spaces do they have in their garage. Now, my house, I have a detached garage, which is 2-car, but then I can easily put I can put 5 cars in my driveway before we block the sidewalk. It's up to the landlord how many they're going to allow, but also the
The
HOA.
HOA too.
You know, with HOAs, they have to be really careful with the number of vehicles for fair housing.
Mitch, can you hear
I
us
have
online?
3 teenage children that each have a car. If you're only gonna allow me 2 cars, are you discriminating because I have children? Vehicles are cars, trucks, motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, RVs, travel trailers, watercraft, boats, those are all considered vehicles.
So you have to be specific.
No, those are all, that's what it all covers, and it's on the lease. But talk to your tenants. How many vehicles do you have? I had tenants that had 2 cars, a truck, a trailer, and 2 motorcycles. We can only have 2, but we negotiated with the landlord that, hey, this is what they have. They will store the trailer someplace else, but they would like to have the 2 cars and the motorcycles. And they agreed to it. Just don't set them up for failure.
I learned this lesson. This was many, many years ago. When I showed the property, you know, they would call on a small car, on a sedan. Well, the day of moving, he shows on a huge truck, you know, those that they have the two tires on the back. And I look and I was like, that car is not gonna fit in this garage. And it was one of those communities that, you know, they're very limited to the number of guest spaces. And they're actually for guests, not the homeowner. Well, and I said, you may wanna try if that vehicle fits in it. And of course, I mean, it was sticking out outside the garage. And he asked, he said, can I park there? I said, I don't think that, no.
That's on my townhouse. I have to park in the garage and my guests are literally only allowed to park in that space pulled in, and that's it.
My brother-in-law just bought a townhouse down in Kemo. And his driveway is 3 feet. And then they have parking in different areas, but it's very limited parking.
Yeah,
So it's the 2 vehicles, and if we go visit, hopefully we can get one of the closest parking
And I had
spaces.
one car.
and those people,
And they said I could only have in front of my house, and that was it. And then visitor parking, but it's at the back of the neighborhood, so they would be walking, I'm like, I moved out there.
Yeah.
I was like,
and the poor guy had just bought that truck. Will you believe they still lease the house? He went and traded the truck.
Okay, must have liked the house.
I understand.
Okay, so vehicles, talk to your tenants, talk to your landlords. Trip charge. How much is the landlord gonna charge if I call in, I need repairs, and the repair guy shows up and they can't get into the property? Key box authorization, authorized during the last blank days of the lease. How long does it take you to lease a property, this property? So, you know, if you look at your CMA and it says 60 days, it's a higher end property, you may want to put 60 days. So at the last 60 days, they can put it for sale sign out or for lease sign out and a lockbox. Now, if the tenant gets to those last 60 days and they say no, what's the fee gonna be? I've always seen 2 months rent. If it's 30 days, 1 month's rent. Because the landlord doesn't want to have that property sitting vacant, paying everything to keep it, to maintain it. Inventory and condition form to be delivered within how many days?
7 days.
It's up to the landlord.
It's absolutely, but sometimes, you know, it's like that things that start showing up. Like after they move in, you know, something is not working. What do you put, 3 days, 5 days?
3 days, 2 days. Best practice is for the landlord to do it with them, but I don't want somebody moving into my house with their movers and everything, and then they do the inventory and condition form 7 days later, there's a hole in the wall, well, wasn't there until you moved in.
I tell the landlords, you know, do a video before the tenant moves in.
Yeah.
Cause I stay in Atlanta too. When I moved in, we couldn't believe it. Like, we couldn't believe, like, and you know, we had already signed a contract, we're 2 girls from out of town, so you know, we didn't have anybody to walk it. When we walked in and I left furniture in, like, that's not like, we were on the phone, like, I mean, people just left me here, it took like 3 months for her to come and get the furniture. The house was a mess and destroyed, but thankfully our realtor, he was just like, for some, now that I'm really trying to understand everything he was doing, he's like, we take pictures of it. Everything that you have an issue with, doesn't matter how small, a dent in the wall, a paint
Everything.
leak off right here, right there, so luckily, and now I'm like, when I finally became a realtor, I'm like, you know what, my landlord was dead wrong for how she did it.
Yeah.
I'm so happy we have, so when we move out, cause I'm already telling her, that's how we re-signed, I said, I don't feel like dealing with her this year, let's just extend it another year, but I know now I'm getting everything ready, like, okay, let me make sure we sent these pictures before we moved in, so she knew what was wrong, she knew we had constant issues, cause I'm literally going to file a report, cause you were a terrible landlord.
Yeah. That's what I'm telling your landlords, do the inventory and condition form with them, take pictures. People go in and take a picture of this room, no, I want you to take a picture
The wall,
of this, of the door, I want you to take a picture of the light fixtures, I want to take a picture of the carpet. It's not for aesthetics, normal wear and tear is what they allow for when it comes to the security deposit. So I want to show that, yeah, this is brand new wallpaper here. We had one, they moved out and they had put a brought a engine and worked on it in the living room. So oil stains, and then they had birds and no pets were allowed. You ever had birds? They make a mess and they have this dander. It's just like dust that gets everywhere. All right, so inventory condition form, is the landlord gonna maintain the lawn, or is the tenant gonna do it? Are they gonna have a contractor do it, chosen by the tenant, or a contractor that's paid by the tenant? So this would be, I'm the landlord, I hire the contractor, but the tenant pays for it. Same thing I said in the pest control. Pool and spa, is the landlord gonna take care of it? Is the tenant going to take care of it? Are they gonna have a contractor? For my property, I have a contractor. Most likely, I would still have that same contractor. I may make the tenant pay for
Is it best to isolate those yard and pool
it. Yeah,
maintenance separate from including them in the rent?
I would do it separate, because then it's for sure that this is who's going to be doing the yard, this is going. I had a listing, and when we got a tenant, they were residents, young medical residents, so they asked, Mr. Landlord, we will pay you this much more if you will take care of the yard. It's fantastic for the landlord. Repairs, emergency phone numbers. This is a number that the landlord needs to make sure is monitored 24/7. If there's a water main that breaks, I want to know about it. And then that goes right onto your lease. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, so landlords are required to fix stuff?
Some stuff,
Okay. Oh,
some stuff.
cause like, we would ask her about stuff, and like, when we came there, all the restroom, like, piping, basically, it was just, I don't know if it was clogged, or we don't know what was wrong. Toilets weren't flushing the way it was supposed to, and we would hit her up, ask her for help, and she was just like, it's not my problem, like, y'all have to go handle your own.
Of course, that's a
Yeah.
different state.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
So here it's gonna be health and safety. Water it has to be, you have to have hot water that gets up to 120 degrees, I think.
Wow.
Wow, yeah, but if you're not paying, well, water, AC and heat has to be fixed. But like if the toilet's clogged up and it wasn't caused by the property, you clogged it, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to fix things if someone is not paying their rent also.
Wow, I have better relatives.
If there's any appliances that are staying with the property, let's say you put in here that's in the washer, dryer, refrigerator. But I'm gonna leave the washer and dryer, refrigerator as long as they work. Once they quit, I'm not gonna repair them. You can get a new one, I'll get rid of the old one. Sometimes they're not gonna replace them.
You know, one thing, Mitch, too, on the emergency contact, it can, over there, I have some landlords that said, don't give my number. I said, no, it has to be your number. It cannot be a home warranty.
Right, yeah, it's an emergency number, and talk to the landlord. Do you want your house to be flooding and not being able, then not to be able to get in touch with you? Or on fire? Special provisions, could be any number of things, and anything else the landlord wants. And then paragraph 21 are the regular agreements. Fair housing, Texas property code. Window latches on each window, key doorknob lock or key deadbolt lock on each exterior door, a sliding door pin lock on each exterior glass slide door, a sliding door handle latch or sliding door security bar, a keyless bolting device and door viewer. Now, if it's a glass door, you don't have to have it separate. You gotta be able to see who's on the side. Property code also requires smoke alarms in certain locations. Different municipalities have different rules when it comes to pools. You may have to have a surround, you may have to have an alarm on the back door or a door that goes to the pool. It's the landlord's responsibility. The house built before 1978, you have to do lead based disclosure. And then it talks about wire fraud. Okay. That's the listing agreement. Let's switch over and look at the lease real quick. 2000s. Come on. Okay, paragraph 1 is gonna be the parties, landlord, tenants, property address. Now, with this, they've done it address first, legal description second, and everything else is the opposite direction. Which county is it in? What non-realty items will be staying with the property? Washer, dryer, kids' play set. When does it start? When does it end? Talks about delay of occupancy. Tenant must occupy the property within 5 days of the commencement date. If tenant is unable to within 5 days, tenant may terminate this lease by giving written notice to the landlord before the property becomes available. This is if I've got a lease that starts July 5th, but the other people don't move out. And if I can't move in within 5 days, the tenant can terminate the lease if there's a deposit back. If at the end of the lease, it's automatically gonna renew on a month-to-month basis. Notification, 30 days before the expiration date or blank days before expiration date. If it takes 2 months to lease this property because of the price, you may want to have 60 days. They have to give you 60 days notice they're going to move out, both sides. If the property automatically renews on a month-to-month basis, what's written notification required on the lap? When are they gonna move out? So I give you written notification today, which is July 28th. Is it going to be the last day of the month following notification? So if you give it today, I wouldn't move out until July 31st. Or is it going to be 30 days from when I gave notification? So it'd be July 20th if you gave notification today.
Which I see that it's a 2-year-old form. Is there any change, important change from?
No, not on the lease. I haven't heard of anything new on the lease. What's the monthly rent? When is it due? Talk to your tenants. Make sure you're not setting them up for failure if they don't get paid on the 1st or 15th. Weekend holidays and mail delays are not an excuse. You can't say the rent's in the mail. If it's not received by a date it's due, it's late. Tenant will pay first month's rent made payable to either the landlord, the listing broker, the property manager. That's that first month's rent.
It's better to put the listing broker, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of waiting, I did that huge mistake.
Well,
3 months later,
according to the listing agreement, it's due when they sign it. So yes, it's best to have it paid directly to the.
but I was not the landlord, I was the tenant. So
Okay.
she didn't say anything. And her clients sent her the check from Costa Rica, or I don't know what she was living.
The other
And I was
broker is
like,
responsible for,
Writers,
they're responsible for paying us once the lease is signed.
they take it 3 months later.
You should have been yelling at that broker. Okay, let's see. Prorated rent. So how much is a prorated rent going to be if they're moving in not the first of the month? And how's it going to be paid? The first month's rent and prorated rent. Normally, they're going to ask for certified funds. I don't want a personal check. I want electronic check. I want something that's certified.
Money orders.
Yeah. Where is rent going to be paid to? Tenant needs to know where to send the money. I've seen a lot of times on here, a person's name and Zelle. Seen that on here, or direct deposit.
Regarding payments, I have a landlord right now that is offering a refund on a punctual payment of rent
Really?
of $100, yes.
Okay.
And he sells that money back to the tenant if they pay on time. Is that something reasonable? I mean.
That's reasonable.
That's
That's a little bit, or yeah.
It sounds great.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
I
actually
should go and send it.
Yeah, that's $1,200 a year.
Uh-huh.
All right, methods of payment. Tenant must pay all rent timely without demand deduction. How do they want it paid? Cashier's check, electronic payment, direct deposit, anything. Landlord requires or does not require tenant to pay monthly rents by one payment. This is if you have roommates. And so I don't want a check from you and another check from you and a check from her. I want you three to get it together and give me one check. Yeah. Makes it so much easier for your landlords. Address on top of each page. There'll be no rent increases through the primary term, so if it's 1 year, they're not gonna up the rent, they may up it after 12 months. If landlord does not actually receive the rent payment in full in the designated place of payment by 11/59, what's the late charges? Are there any additional late charges per day? And this talks about, you can't say it's in the mail. Return payments. If check bounces, how much is the landlord going to charge? This is a good time here to talk to your tenants. If they have a late charge, and let's say it's $50, and then they send the rent in late, but they don't account for that $50, that $50 comes off the top, they're still late on the rent. There's a late charge or any type of fund, they pay that first and then the rent, they're still late. Yep, right there says all that. Animals. Tenant may not permit even temporary any animal on the property, including mammals, reptiles, birds, fish, rodents, or insects. Always wondered if my tenant calls me and says the house has roaches, can I charge them a pet deposit? It says insects. If the tenant violates the pet policy, what's the charge for it? The landlord can.
It's a good.
If there is a pet on the property that's not authorized to be there, they have to give them 24-hour notice, and then the landlord can have the pet removed. So they call the pound to come get that pet. And charge them for the fee. Security deposit, we talked about that earlier. The tenant will not, the landlord will probably deposit that, but the tenant's not gonna get the interest on it. It's the landlord's interest. Refund. Tenant must give landlord at least 30 days written notice of surrender before the landlord is obligated to account for or refund the security deposit. Any refund the security deposit will be made payable to all tenants named on the lease.
Says at least 30 days,
At least 30 days.
so it could be more.
It could be more. Yeah. And there's rules that go with this, giving back the security deposit. It's all covered in the property code and it's covered in that landlord tenant guide. Landlord may deduct for reasonable charges for damages, except wear and tear, and that's why you have the pictures. Cost of tenant responsible for cleaning, deodorize, or exterminating. Unpaid or accelerated rents, unpaid late charges, unpaid utilities. In the late charges, it says the landlord can call due the rents. They're late a couple of times, and I say, okay, you need to pay me for the next 6 months up front.
One thing too, remind the landlords that once the tenant moves, let's say if they cannot meet him that day or
Mhm.
something with the keys, always check those properties right away. One time I went, he called me, but to lease the property. So when I met the landlord there was a dog, and I said, whose dog is this? He said, the tenant was late. They escaped, and I've been feeding their dog for the past 4 days.
Oh, no. That's sad.
Yes, I had to adopt the dog. I felt so bad that they were gonna take the dog to the pound.
Yeah. Oh, replacing unreturned keys, removal of locks. There's a whole list of here of things that the landlord can deduct on. Your tenants need to look at that. Utilities, what utilities is the landlord gonna pay? Computers being very, very picky.
You always have to provide the HOA rules,
Yes,
copy of the HOA.
Yes. and as a tenant's agent, you need to make sure you get it because on here it says the tenant will abide by the HOA rules. Shouldn't they know what they're abiding by? Who's gonna be occupying the property, including names and ages of all occupants? This is maybe where you put in those people that'll be coming just a couple of months. If they're over 18 years of age, the landlord should require everyone to do application, background checks and everything. This also tells you if there's gonna be 2 or 3 children, how old they may be.
So I have a client, it's his grandma. He wants to move her 5 minutes away from the parents' house, which is his parents, her children, her child,
Okay.
and he plays overseas. So I'm trying to figure out how do I prove his income, do I do like contract, he plays in Greece?
Tax returns?
Tax returns, that's a good one. Talk to the landlord, ask them how they want it.
Bank statements?
I think bank statements is like a general thing you can use. And everybody will accept,
A bank statement, show how much money they have.
yeah.
If the telephone number or email changes, they need to let their landlord know about it within 5 days. Off the subject, if your telephone number or your email changes, you need to let the broker know, let our office know. You also need to let Trek and HAR know. So if you get notices, you want to get on, especially if they're from Trek. Right here, it says HOA, this property is or is not an HOA, what's the name of the HOA? Tenant must comply with owners association rules and restrictive covenants. So yeah, they're agreeing to do it, but they need to know what it is. Go ahead and ask for the HOA information when you take the listing.
There's a number of people that are looking for houses for Airbnb that they want to lease and then do the Airbnb.
Yeah, no, and some HOAs don't allow, my HOA, we voted last year, we don't allow short-term rentals.
In the special provisions, I add that exclusively, is that right to do?
You can, you're the
Because I
landlord.
think there's crazy, they read. and
They're gonna
they-
try to sublease it.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
So I put it specifically and read.
There was something on the news a few months ago. I think it was, I don't know if it was an entire town by Dallas that they had,
That said no.
that they said no to.
Yeah, I heard about that, and I think they're bringing it up to the legislature also. So the entire town, they may not be able to do it, but individual, this HOAs could.
I think they were getting a lot of, people from investors buying properties in there. That's why they were trying to
Yeah.
restrict.
And they're saying that, well, I have free right to use my property as I choose to. Now, if I join an HOA, that's different because I abide by those rules. But in the entire town, what if Houston decided they don't do short terms?
I think it was, they were trying also to say, hey, we want our community to be able to buy.
Prohibitions. Hot tubs, spas, above ground pools, trampolines, anything that would cause cancellation or suspension of their homeowners insurance. Any activity which is a nuisance, repair vehicles, any business type. Including but not limited to childcare. Any activity which violates zoning ordinances or homeowners association. Any legal or unlawful use, can't do that. How many guests for how many days for a guest? There's your parking rules. Advertising, landlord may permit prominently display for sale, for lease, or similarly worded signs on the property during the term of this lease or any renewal period.
Also
Landlord-
the HOA too. Sometimes they don't allow you.
Sometimes they don't, right, sometimes they don't, but this is saying that letting the tenant know that the landlord can sell this property. They can put a sign in the yard during that lease, not just the last 30 days or 60 days. That has to do with the lockbox. Before accessing the property, landlord or any authorized by landlord will attempt to first contact tenant, but may enter the property at reasonable times without notice to make repairs or show. So I can call you and say, hey, I'm gonna enter your property at 1 o'clock today. Or let's say 3 o'clock. Talk about trip charges, key box authorization during the last, how many days? If they're not going to allow it, what are they gonna pay? Moving condition. It's as is. As is provided landlord at landlord's expense. This would be if you've done the walkthrough and there's still furniture in the property. You could put on here, all furniture to be removed, carpet to be cleaned, fleas to be treated. Fence to be fixed,
Mold to be removed.
mold to be removed.
I don't know.
Inventory condition form, how many days do they have to give it? Move out condition, when lease end, tenant will surrender the property in the same condition as it was received, minus normal wear and tear. Normal wear and tear means deterioration that occurs without negligence, carelessness, or accident or abuse. Surrender is when they give the keys back. Talks about abandonment. Personal property, what will happen to personal property if they leave it in the property? Landlord can have it removed, they can send it to a trash, they can send it to landfill, they can donate it, they can store it and charge the tenant for the storage. Tenant must reimburse landlord at all landlord's reasonable cost. Tenant responsibilities, keep the property clean and sanitary, properly dispose of all garbage. Supply and change air conditioning filters, supply and replace light bulbs. Maintain appropriate levels of chemicals. Yeah. So, the tenant should go over all this, take all necessary landlord's not responsible for wrapping things, it's the tenant that's responsible for that. If they lose their keys, they're gonna have to take care of it. Some of this the landlord will. It says right here, know the location and operation of the main water cutoff valve and all electric breakers and how to switch it on. As a landlord, wouldn't you want to make sure that's known? So do a walkthrough with the tenants. Who's gonna take care of the lawn, the yard?
Whose responsibility is the walkthrough?
It's gonna be the tenants according to the lease. Yeah. I would say, as a good landlord. They don't do it, go do it with them. It makes it easier when you're, wanna keep money back from the security deposit, if you've got documentation that. No, there was not a hard hole in this carpet, no, this carpet's brand new today. Normal wear and tear, yeah, you've got a trail going through here, in normal traffic,
I can tell you a story real fast.
real fast.
Real fast. So they left the house horrible, okay? So I missed the 30 days that you have to give the money back.
The deposit.
And they sued me. So then I couldn't charge them for anything. And because I sent it late.
Hmm.
And it was already past the 30 days. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
It says.
you've gotta maintain, you've gotta account for it within 30 days.
But it was the same house that I was living with the eviction.
Oh.
So everything passed in the same court. So I was there, dealing with everybody. Good.
They will not remove anything from the property, change the property, rekey the property, make holes in the woodwork, except that it's reasonable number of small nails. You know, you're putting up a picture, you're not gonna use a bolt. Permit water furniture. I didn't even know they still sold those.
Do they? I haven't seen one in years.
I didn't either, but yeah, you can still buy them. You can still get a water bed. If you want one.
Okay.
Okay,
I bet you high rises don't allow those. So maybe.
oh, definitely not. Not with the weight.
Yeah.
they put on property. Smoking, including vapes, tobacco, pipes, tenants, guests, family or occupants, permitted or not permitted. And this is on the property. If you have, talking to your tenants about this, you can't smoke in the garage, you can't smoke in the yard, you can't smoke in the front yard if it's not permitted. No tobacco, no vaping. Of course, nothing illegal. Repairs, this is that emergency number, 24 hours. Landlord fails to repair or condition that materially affects the physical health or safety of an ordinary tenant. It's all covered in the property code. Tenant may not repair or cause to repair any condition regardless of the cause without landlord's permission. All decisions regarding repairs, including the completion of any repair, whether to repair or replace the item, the selection of the contractors will be the landlord's sole discretion. The tenant can't just call someone to come and unplug the toilets. The landlord has to. And you may contact the landlord and they say, oh, fine, go ahead and get a plumber. They can't do the repairs and then say, well, I had a plumber out on the first of the month and it cost this much, so I'm subtracting it from my rent. Can't do that. It's landlord's property. Right,
What is the time frame for repairs?
isn't one unless it materially affects the health of an ordinary tenant.
Air conditioning is not.
No,
If it is 110 outside.
that affects the health
Yeah,
of an
AC.
ordinary tenant,
Water,
plumbing.
plumbing, anything that can affect your health.
Yeah.
Mold, because there's a little bit of mold going.
We had these mold class yesterday for commercial. I think everything possible outside, we were dying by the time we got out of the class.
This talks about the security devices that which we covered in the property code. All notice request the tenant for rekeying, changing or installing. If tenant vacates a property in breach of this lease, landlord may deduct the security deposit. Smoke alarms, there's the property code. Liability, what happens if they don't move out when they're supposed to? They can put a lien on the people if they don't pay their rents. Subordination, everything survives this, everything's together. Casualty loss or condemnation. The landlord can bring it back the way it is. It doesn't necessarily say they have to pay for them to stay someplace else. Never seen it happen where a landlord usually doesn't just let them out. Special provisions, tenant will maintain the renter's insurance. It's a big one that I see a lot.
You know, and that other one, Mitch, she doesn't have number of days, how long does the landlord have to return
No,
the
it
property to the
doesn't.
condition? It's it's a loophole in there.
Special provisions, anything that, like the one I had where they paid for the pest control once a quarter, put it in there. Landlord, tenant will maintain renter's insurance with the landlord as it's not payee, but the landlord
Beneficiary,
beneficiary also, yeah, have them both on there.
and on the tenant insurance, they say that in the application, but they also have to add it here, right? Even if in the application is signed that they will keep renter's insurance.
Yes. Okay, it talks about different ways for
So you have to
default,
ask them for proof of that, right?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you could even, they could even go as far as provide proof before move-in or within a week of move-in, get it specific. Talk about early termination. Landlord doesn't have to let them out as a lease, it's a binding contract. Unless it's because of domestic violence or military orders. That family buying with sex offenders or stalking. Subletting or replacement of tenants, most that is not allowed.
I didn't know, the reason why I left my townhouse was because it got broken into while I left, and they were trying to charge me for everything that they ruined. And I had called my friend who's a lawyer, he was just like, you should have called me from here, just go to the office and say someone was stalking you, because that's pretty much, you see them on my camera. Like,
Yeah.
I left on Friday, they were circling my house, but you know, I'm in New York for my cousin's birthday, so I kept seeing the notification, but I never looked at the camera until I went back, and they had been doing that for days before they actually broke in it. That was the only reason why I didn't have to pay $5,000 for the damages, literally.
If they're going to allow subtenants, normally when they get to this point, either I'll see them put no or extravagant amounts on here. Attorney fees, representation, what addenda is being added to the lease? So if it's being added, it must be in paragraph 31. The next big paragraph, notices. Is the tenant gonna be, if it's gonna be someplace other than the property, put it on here, and then where they want information going to for the landlord. Paragraph 34 is the next important one. This is if everyone over 18 dies, who has the legal right to enter the property to get their personal effects? You need to have a name on there. There was a case where someone died and someone came in and took everything. But they weren't related to them. They don't know who they were. Yeah, which was really sad. All right. Landlord's broker, Keller Williams Memorial, if it's our listing, will not be property manager. Don't. All right, and then buyers and our tenants and landlords sign everything. We're done.
You know, Mitch, there was one thing that I just learned on one lease that I did that, on the renter's insurance, I was representing the landlord. I was still, I think it was a property manager, told me, always include your landlord on the tenant's insurance as an interested party.
Yes.
Because if the people cancel the
Then they get
policy or they
notification.
stop paying and the landlord gets notified.
Perfect. All right, we are done. Thank you. One person still online.